Earth is the only planet in the solar system where lives are possible. But moving tectonic plates, climate change, and other factors will always remain prominent, resulting in threatening natural disaster leading to the death of millions of people. There had been a huge development all around the world in fields like technology, medicine, etc. But no matter how much the world gets developed, natural disasters can't be stopped. However, with proper precaution, damage can be reduced. So today, to know about top 10 worst natural disasters, stick to this video until the end. So welcome to the amazing facts. North Korea arduous march. As we know, North Korea's government is a complete monarch, and also the government there does not tend to serve citizens. Also, if you want to know how cruel is Kim Jong-un, we have made an interesting video on this which you can watch in your spare time. Arduous march started in 1994 and lasted for 4 years. After this, the disaster was followed by a series of natural disasters. With its root in ineffective government and the collapse of North Korea's patron state, natural disasters intensified the effects of the resulting famines, leading to over 500,000 deaths from starvation or hunger-related illness. Recently, North Korea has predicted that another arduous march is incoming, and the world may soon see a repeat of one of the worst disasters in modern history. Shaanxi earthquake. On 23rd of January 1556, one of the deadliest earthquakes ever recorded hit the Chinese province of Shaanxi in the late evening, with the aftershocks continuing through the following morning, with a magnitude of 8 points on the Richter scale, and caused 830,000 deaths. The epicenter of the earthquake was in Wei River Valley in the Shaanxi province, near the cities of Huaxin, Weinan, and Huayin. A 520-mile wide area was seriously affected, and up to 60% of the population of some cities were wiped out. The reasons for this level of destruction were factors of location, as it hits the densely populated areas, and also people there at that time lived in fragile cave-like structures, due to which effect of tremor was more disastrous. Yellow River flood. China is home to some of world's largest rivers, and as a result is prone to the most catastrophic floods in history. Due to elevated nature of the Yellow River, which runs along the natural dikes that raise it above the plains that surround it, it is one of the most flood-prone rivers on earth. A fact is well known by local Chinese who reinforced the banks of rivers with artificial dikes to control the river flow. Yet in 1887, after days of extremely heavy flooding, the Yellow River burst its bank, flooding large portions of eastern China and covering an estimated 500,000 square miles. The initial floods left 2 million people homeless, and the resulting famine and lack of essentials led to the death of an estimated 900,000 people. Bhola cyclone. The Bhola cyclone from November 8th until November 13th, starting in the Bay of Bengal, is one of the most dangerous cyclones till now. With an average wind speed between 131 miles per hour and 155 miles per hour, it strikes the Bangladesh and brought flooding, rain and damaging winds. In Bangladesh, 35% of the area is less than 6 meters above sea level, and over 20% of the entire country is submerged within annual river floods, so Bangladesh oftenly gets struck by these cyclones. The system traveled north and intensified, driving into the low-lying delta area overnight on 12th November. Government was not able to communicate to most of those living in coastal plain and on the islands of Ganges River Delta, because when they got to know about the cyclone, when many had been asleep and the storm surge struck. But after a detailed study and subsequent report granted to Pakistani authorities by the director of America's National Hurricane Center, it was revealed that the Pakistani government did not carry out most of the recommendations given them, leading to 1970s staggering of approximately 300,000 to 500,000 people, and in some areas nearly half of the population died, making this storm the deadliest tropical cyclone of all time and one of the deadliest natural disasters in recent history. Antioch earthquake. Striking ancient Syria, the earthquake of 576 AD in Antioch devastated the Byzantine Empire and all but completely ruined the city. The earthquake struck without warning on the morning between May 20th through the 29th and killed an estimated 250,000 people. Based on the damage, scientists estimated that the earthquake was between of a category of 8 and 9 on the Mercalli intensity scale. However, this was not enough, as the survivors of the initial earthquake then faced a massive fire that consumed all of remaining standing buildings, nearly wiping out the city entirely. Emperor Justin I was reportedly so devastated by this natural disaster that he entered the church in Constantinople without any of his holy symbols, in an act of humility before God. But after this, a massive relief and rebuilding effort were made which would see the city restored to some extent. Tangshan earthquake. Tangshan earthquake of 1976 on July 28 with a magnitude of 7.5 which nearly devastated the Chinese coal mining and industrial city of Tangshan, located about 68 miles east of Beijing. The death toll was as high as 655,000, and at least 700,000 more people were injured. And property damage was very high, reaching even to Beijing. The main shock struck at 3:42 am when people were asleep. Its epicenter was located in the southern part of the city of Tangshan, and shaking was felt in all directions. Later the same day, a major aftershock occurred in the city of Luangxian, some 43 miles to the northeast. This aftershock caused additional damage and casualties to the city. The earthquake also took a toll on infrastructure and agriculture. It also triggered sand blows throughout the region, which silted wells and irrigation ditches. China flood. Asia is prone to most of the natural disasters. Another one is China flood. Places near the large river valleys often are familiar with the outbreak of floods. This Chinese flood is one of the most devastating floods of all time. This flood hit a large area of central China in 1931. This flood was preceded by heavy monsoon season that resulted in 9 cyclones in 1 month, just before the flood. Also, China was alternatively rocked by heavy drought and then extreme rainfalls. This sudden rainfall led to Yangtze, Yellow and Huai rivers, bursting their banks and flooding central China, killing millions of people and causing enormous property damage. Famous as the deadliest flood of the 20th century, the central China killed an estimated 3.7 to 4 million people. Extreme weather is becoming increasingly common in China, with temperatures in some parts hitting records every year. India cyclone. On November 25, 1839, cyclone slammed the Coringa in India, one of the deadliest cyclones in recorded history. This natural disaster also resulted in 300,000 deaths, strong winds, and a 40-foot storm surge, resulting in the absolute chaos that went on for many weeks. Even after the initial shock, citizens were unable to find clean drinking water or food and perished of hunger and dehydration. One community, nicknamed Hope Island, was reduced to rubble and was never fully rebuilt. More than 20,000 shipping vessels were destroyed, thus ruining the commerce and economy of the city. Those who survived were forced to move on to new communities and attempt to start a new life. To this day, Coringa remains a sleepy fishing village. Tragically, the trauma of the disaster was too great to overcome for its residents. Great Bengal Famine of 1770. There had been many famines in India after the colonialism, as the British had a ruthless economic agenda that did not include empathy for native citizens. Most of the famine was due to the late arrival of monsoon, and also peasants had to pay large taxes to East India Company, which left the peasants with nothing, worsening the condition. The first signs indicating the coming of such a huge famine started in 1769, and the famine itself went on till 1773. It killed approximately 10 million people. During the rule of Mughals, peasants had to pay a tribute of 10 to 15% of their cash harvest. In 1765, the Treaty of Allahabad was signed, and the East India Company took over the task of collecting the tributes from the Mughal emperor. Overnight, the tributes to be paid to government by peasants were increased to 50%, which left the poor farmers with very little. But with increased taxation, this surplus deteriorated rapidly. So, during the famine, peasants were not left with extra food items. This famine struck modern West Bengal, Assam, Odisha, Bihar and Jharkhand. After all this, colonial was supposed to waive off the taxes. But they were looking for their profit, which did not improve the situation. 1920 Haiwan earthquake. Haiwan earthquake in December 16, 1920 registered a 7.8 magnitude on Richter scale, caused the river to change paths and caused landslide, destructing the mountains in the area. Homes were destroyed and hills were collapsed. After this, the survivors suffered hunger and exposure to windstorms and snowfalls, worsening the situation. Many thousands roamed in a deformed landscape, not finding a place to stay. Recent statistics released in 2010 show at least 273,400 were killed by the earthquake around the province, with Haiwan suffering 73,604 deaths, nearly half of the country's entire population. The disaster affected an area of 20,000 square kilometers, with at least 4 counties and scores of villages within 200 kilometers of the epicenter completely reduced to ruins. However, after decades, Haiwan city restored its former glory. So, have you ever been through any of the disasters? If you find this video informative, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you are new here, consider to subscribe. And take care until we meet again.